This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
Welcome to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. This is your host, Tim Link, and I'm so glad you're joining us today. We have a couple of our favorites and one of our favorite books or series of books that we're going to be talking to today. So we get best-selling authors SQuire Rushnell and Louise DuArt on, and we're going to talk about the latest book, Dogwinks. Now, this is part of the Godwink series, which is just fabulous. Definitely one of my all-time favorite books. So I'm going to be looking forward to chatting with them a little bit about the latest book, Dogwinks. Talk about how it's going to expand into some magic on your television or streaming services. So we'll leave that as a little teaser, and then just talk a little bit about the writing styles and how it compares to some of the other great work they've done through the years. So it's always going to be fun, exciting. I'm looking forward to it. So everybody, hang tight. We'll come back right after this commercial break. You're listening to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio.
Take a bite out of your competition. Advertise your business with an ad in Pet Life Radio podcasts and radio shows. There's no other pet-related media that is as large and reaches more pet parents and pet lovers than Pet Life Radio. With over 7 million monthly listeners, Pet Life Radio podcasts are available on all major podcast platforms. And our live radio stream goes out to over 250 million subscribers on iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Stitcher, and other streaming apps. For more information on how you can advertise on the #1 pet podcast and radio network, visit PetLifeRadio.com/advertise today.
Let's talk pets on PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. Join us now is best-selling authors of the Godwink series, Squire Rushnell and Louise DuArt. Welcome to the show, or welcome back. I think it's been a little while.
Hello, Tim.
Hey, great to be here. Even though our last names are different, we are married, Squire and Louise. So as I said, we're called Squeeze.
Yes, we're madly in love.
Yes.
There you
not
go.
with each other.
That's
not
right.
with each other, but that's okay. We'll work on that.
That's right. Yeah, it's good to be mad and in love, so that's good. So that's great. That's great. And, obviously, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the wonderful, wonderful careers you guys have had and how it ties into this book. But I'm excited about this one. It's part of the Godwink series. And then the latest is called Dogwinks, True Godwink Stories of Dogs and Their Blessings They Bring. So tell us a little bit about this book, how it wraps into the Godwink series, and then maybe I'll pick your brain about maybe one of the favorites, if you can, one of the favorite stories in the book.
Sure. Well, a Dogwink is a Godwink story, a true Godwink story with a dog right at the center of it. And so you might say, what is a Godwink? Well, a Godwink is a new word in the language. It's been in the language since our first book came out 20 years ago, When God Winks. And a Godwink is one of those things that happens to everybody. You think you'd want to call it a coincidence, but you know it isn't a coincidence. And you know that it comes from divine origin. And so that word filled a vacancy in the language. It's been going into the language. We've been filling up, this is the 12th book, with great stories, all true stories, and 3 Hallmark movies. And now our first Netflix movie is coming over the hill. And so it's coming over the hill with a Dogwink.
The series, it's just beautifully done, beautifully written. Every time I pick up one of the books, it gives me a chance to pause and reflect and know that, God's around us and all these wonderful little synchronicities that are going on, which are, I believe, are just part of the divine. And then when you tie it in with Dogwinks, we're Pet Life Radio, so anything to do with a furry friend or a finned or a feathered friend, we're all on board with it.
Yeah, great.
It's interesting because as we think about dogs, how they have so many attributes that are so beautiful. And when you think about who God is and the attributes that he gives dogs are very much what he is. They are compassionate. They are faithful. They love us unconditionally. They are always in the moment. They protect us. And they love us no matter what. And they always want our attention.
They sit at your feet, listen to you, and laugh at all your jokes. I think they're laughing.
Absolutely. So I want to talk a little bit about how putting the stories together here in just a moment. But when you take a look at this, I know I'm putting you guys on the spot here, but you've got all these wonderful stories. There's the story about the dog Bullet, the golden retriever, and there's one about Bella, and they all have these unique stories or histories or these little tidbits that they brought to life. Is it even possible, even just for this book, to pick one that you're like, wow, this one put me over the top. It has touched me so much that it's my number one, without making the rest of them feel bad?
Well, you know something? I think that every single story that I'm ever involved in writing, at that moment, it's like one of my children.
Or your favorite pet.
It's or my favorite pet. It's the one that's sitting on my lap is my favorite at the moment. But every story in this book, Dogwinks, is a favorite for a different reason. Mm-hmm. And certainly Ruby, which is the first story in the book, which I'd love to tell it to you, is the basis of the Netflix movie that we are starting shooting, and the movie will come out probably next February. But that story is such an amazing Godwink, and it fulfills everything that we want to fulfill about Godwinks, but it also does the same for Dogwinks. And then there's another wonderful story that if we have time, I'd love to have Louise tell, and that is her story about her dog, Spotty.
Well, you said you'd put me on the spot. Well, I have my dog, Spot. Can I tell the story? It's just really
absolutely. Yes, please.
Okay, because I love talking about Spotty, my best friend ever. Well, when I was a little girl, every Christmas on my Christmas list, the top of the list, I would write dog, D-O-G. And my mother would always say, Louise, you're not, in her Boston accent, Louise, you're not getting a dog. And I'd say, Mom, please, I just want a dog. No, you're not getting a dog. And I used to pray about it all the time. I wanted a dog so bad. Now, I understood why my mother did not want me to get a dog, because when she was a little girl, her grandfather was bit by a rabid dog, and he died. And so my mother was so fearful of dogs. I mean, so I could understand that. But that didn't stop me. Every year I still would say I want a dog. Finally, one day she was not in the best mood, and she really let me have it. And she said, Louise, the only way you're going to get a dog is if someone leaves you a dog in their will. Well, part of my prayer was answered because Mr. Stelberger, who lived upstairs from us, our tenant, he had an elderly mother, and she had a dog named Spotty. And she wanted me to be the dog sitter because I loved Spotty. Every time I would see Spotty and I was, she would just get so excited, and I'd be so happy to see her. And every time I'd leave Spotty, I'd be like a little down because I couldn't wait till I see Spotty again. So one day, Mr. Stelberger knocks on the door, and he said, I have some sad news. My mother passed away, but she left Louise something in her will. My mother said, Louise, something in her will? What would she leave Louise? He said, well, I'll go get it. It's in the back of the car. And on a leash, he had Spotty.
Oh, my.
He said, He said, my mother left you Spotty in her will. And I looked up at my mother and I said, Ma, can I keep her? And, it seemed like an eternity. My mother was looking back and forth, and finally she said, well, I guess I don't have a choice. So Spotty became my dog, and my mother ended up actually loving Spotty. Not as much as me, but she loves Spotty, and Spotty was the best ever.
I love it. So some divine intervention, and you got her. Yeah. She thought not in a billion years would somebody leave you a dog in their will. Come on, that's not going to happen. There you go.
See how God answers prayers.
Yeah, but we also know Granny, and so chances are what was going through her head when she said something had been left in the will.
Yeah, she was hoping it was money.
She said, is that all? A dog?
My mother was so funny. My mother passed away a couple of years ago, but she lived with us. She lived to be 101. And she was, she was feisty to the end.
Yeah. We honored her.
Yeah. So, Squire, when you have to tell the Ruby story. Because,
why don't we let Tim run the show?
Oh, okay.
No, well, it's a perfect segue. Perfect segue, because as you mentioned, we're talking about all these wonderful books and all the wonderful stories, and now all of a sudden, Ruby, the first story here in the book, obviously, is it's going to be a Netflix film, which everybody is definitely going to tune into. So, how did that turn out? As far as tell us a little bit about Ruby, and then tell us how in the world did that become a Netflix thing? Did they approach you, or is this something you've been working on? So on and so forth.
So God is always our agent. He's always our writing partner and everything else. So
he's our streaming service.
Yeah, he's involved with everything. So anyway, Ruby, let me tell you the story of Ruby. Ruby was a 7-month-old pup in a shelter, Australian Shepherd, Border Collie mix. Both of them we know, high spirit, very intelligent, but Ruby was also delightfully mischievous. So everybody at the shelter loved Ruby, but Ruby was she'd steal the pizza off everybody's plate, and she just got into trouble. Anyway, she had been returned 5 times, and that was the limit as far as that shelter was concerned. But the other limit was that on the last time that she was returned, she was accused of nipping at children. That got the lawyers all freaked out, and so they said, Ruby is going to be on the euthanasia list in 2 hours. Now, there was a trainer by the name of Pat Inman. She worked with all the dogs that was going to go out and go on their interviews to help them, put their best paw forward. And so she would work with Ruby, and she worked with Ruby, and she said, you got to do it. You got to do it. You got to be, got to be on your best behavior. Well, when she got the call that Ruby was going to be put down in 2 hours, she rushed right over to the shelter, and she said to the manager, you can't put this dog down. This is such a smart dog. You just can't do this. She said, can't you take this dog? And he said, well, I tried taking Ruby home, and I got 3 dogs, and it just didn't work. Can't you take Ruby? She said, my husband told me if I bring another dog home, that's it. She said, I don't know what we can do. We got to do something. Can't you call the canine unit at the state police? The manager said, well, you know something, in 10 years, I've been here and they have never taken one of our dogs. They get these dogs for $15,000 from the Czech Republic. They're bred for, search and rescue. They just never tried one of our dogs. She left and she was so despondent. Pat Inman put the shelter in the rearview mirror, and she never looked back because she didn't want to know what the answer was. But the manager did take a chance. He called the commander of the canine unit. Now, here is where divine alignment of Godwinks start to work in lives. When we step out in faith, Godwinks start to happen. That commander had just gotten word that his budget had been cut. That $15,000 for a new dog was cut. And he had an officer he wanted to put into the force. And so now a guy is on the phone at the shelter saying, we got this dog, but he's going to be put down in 2 hours. Very smart. He said, okay, I'll come look. That officer came and he looked and he said, all right, well, we're going to take a chance. He called up Trooper Dan O'Neill, the young trooper who had wanted to be in the canine unit for years. He had been begging to be in the unit. He had ADD, and he had everything that he did in his life. He had to stress a little bit more on, struggle a little bit more on. And so now the commander was putting him together with Ruby, who was definitely an ADD dog. And so these 2 partners worked tirelessly for 6 months. Ruby didn't want to give it up. She just didn't want. Finally, she decided that it was better to be obedient than disobedient. And they started working together with all the hotsy-totsy dogs, and Ruby started excelling at every single thing she did. Fast forward 2 years. It's a very cold night. They get a call in the canine unit. There's a boy who's lost in the woods. The parents can't find him. Search parties haven't been able to find him. And so go out the canine units, and Ruby bolts off into the woods. And Officer Dan is right on her tail, running through the woods. Officer Dan arrives at a ravine. Ruby is at the bottom of the ravine licking the face of a boy. The boy has blood coming out of all of his orifices. His nose is plugged up. His mouth is plugged up. And Officer Dan sees there's almost no pulse. But Ruby is doing the dog version of CPR, licking. And all of a sudden the boy draws in a breath. And Officer Dan radios, "We got a breath. The boy is alive." He gives them the GPS coordinates. Then they can't find the coordinates. They're not working. Ruby, bark. And so now Ruby is barking. And the other EMTs are coming. They are coming along, and they get the boy. They put him on a stretcher and put him into the ambulance, and he goes off to the hospital. Officer Dan says, "I'm going to go tell the parents what hospital their son is at and that they think he'll live." The mother is weeping, and the father is weeping. They are so grateful. And Officer Dan turns to leave, and the mother says, "Officer, have you ever heard of a dog named Ruby?" He turns surprised. He said, "Ma'am, my partner is Ruby. Ruby just saved your boy." And she cried again. She said, "My name is Pat Inman. I'm the volunteer who used to work at the shelter, and I never knew what happened to Ruby." Officer Dan said, "That means that the dog that you saved, Ruby, is the dog that just saved your son's life."
Oh,
and that
boy.
year, Ruby went off to she was named the
Hero Dog
of the Year, Hero Rescue Dog of the Year.
Ruby.
And now Ruby is going to be our first Netflix movie.
What a great story. And I love how it just intertwines. Everything comes back around together as it's meant to be. Yeah, so when you're talking about the Netflix movie, I mean, you just told the story. So are you writing the screenplay or the stream play, I guess they call it, for Netflix?
We write the story, and we're not screenwriters, and we're authors, and we have a fabulous screenwriter.
Yes, Karen Jansen, who wrote Dolphin's Tale.
Oh, yeah.
And she's
A Walk to Remember.
And A Walk to Remember. She's great. But, you asked him, how did we even get to Netflix? Well, Squire was doing a regular segment on the Today Show, a Godwink segment, and he would do that every month. And so he did the Ruby story. So our partner, who does a lot of the Hallmark movies with us, the Godwink Hallmark movies, he was in L.A., and he was
His name is Angel.
Dan Angel, how perfect. And he was pitching he does other movies, he's pitching other movies to Netflix, and they would say, "Nah, I don't think so, no. And so then he was just about to leave, and he said, "Well, I have one more story." And he tells the Ruby story, and they say, "That's the one we want." So Dan was a very integral part of getting this whole thing done, because we live on an island off the coast of Massachusetts, Martha's Vineyard, and he's in L.A. So he really, he told the story great, and they loved it, and they said, "Let's do it," and that was it.
But here's how, again, divine alignment and Godwinks all come together. Dan Angel wasn't going to pitch that in that meeting because it was pitched to Hallmark. And he had only just found out that Hallmark's turned it down disappointingly and surprisingly.
Wow.
Because we always have to present 3 stories and then they pick the one that they want to do, or 2 sometimes. So we were really surprised when that movie got turned down, because the head of Hallmark loves dogs. But what we found out is that as much as he loves dogs, he hates to see dogs in jeopardy. And they said, this will never pass muster with the boss, because as much as he loves dogs, he would never want to see a dog in jeopardy.
And of course, the first
Ruby,
scene.
Yeah, Ruby was in jeopardy in scene number 1. Yeah.
Yeah. So Ruby's story is meant to be told, not only in your guys' writing, but obviously on the big screen or on the little screen, however we put it nowadays, depending on how big your television or computer screen is. So that story is meant to be. But I love that, because when you talk about, you guys have obviously been in the industry for years. You started very, very young, I will say, right?
Of course.
Your children when it started, yes. But, you've been through all of this, and just pitching to the networks, whether you have this long-term relationship with them and they want good stories from you to create movies, or whether it's something new. That's a challenge because that environment's always shifting, people coming and going, people are in charge, and finding that right thing that hits a button with the right person at the right time. The way I look at it is from a conscious standpoint, from a logical standpoint. You think, okay, well, it's just timing. I've got a whole purse full or a whole bucket full of shows I want to present. Surely one of these will fit. But when you look at it from a subconscious or a divine standpoint, you're absolutely right, because he had no intention on pitting this show, or at least it was way in his big bucket. It was down in the bottom. And he's like, okay, I've got one more shot as I walk out the door, because the next time I come in this door, the players may change, or their needs may change, or the network may shift. And all of a sudden he just throws it out there. And by divine intervention there, it presents itself.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons why, too, that they connected to this story is that we're in a situation now in our culture, in our world, where, there's just so much uncertainty. There's so much, with the COVID and then some violence happening around. It's like people are mad at people, they're canceling people all over the place.
But everybody loves dogs.
But everyone loves their dogs. So that's a common denominator, is their pets. Everyone loves dogs and cats and birds and whatever. And so I think that just brings people together. When people have a dog, it doesn't matter if someone's a Republican, a Democrat, what faith they are, or whatever. Everyone loves dogs across the board.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And they've got dogs in their life, or they did have dogs, or they had one when they were children, or they harassed their mom until finally mom caved in. And all right. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll come back right after this, and we'll talk a little bit more about the book Dogwinks, but I also want to talk about the whole industry, writing, and talk a little bit about your guys' background as well, because I think that's important to share to everybody. It's very exciting. So everybody hang tight. We'll come back right after this commercial break. You're listening to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio.
Sit. Stay. We'll be right back after a short pause. Well, 4 to be exact.
Hi, this is Tim Link, animal communicator and pet expert, and host of Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. Have you ever wanted to know what your pet is really thinking? Do you want to find out if they truly understand what you're trying to tell them? Ever wish you could build a better understanding and closer relationship with your pet? Well, now you can. Learning to Communicate with Animals is a 4-part on-demand workshop. In the workshop, you'll learn the essential techniques that are necessary to communicate with animals, including what is animal communication, breathing correctly to achieve the perfect state to communicate with your animals at a deeper level, using guided meditation exercises and method to communicate with animals, and how to send and receive information from your animals. So if you're wanting to learn how to communicate and connect with your animals at a deeper level, visit PetLifeRadio.com/workshop and purchase and download Learning to Communicate with Animals. You'll be glad you did.
Let's talk pets.
Let's talk pets
On Pet Life Radio.
Pet Life Radio.
PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. Continue our discussion with the best-selling authors of the Godwink series, Squire Rushnell and Louise DuArt, the latest book, Dogwinks. So let me ask you guys, when everybody goes out and picks up a copy of this book, Dogwinks, and they read through it, they're going to read through it right. I mean, the stories just flow so nicely. This is, to me, a one-nighter. It's a nice-sized book, but to me, I can't stop reading it, so it's done. I'm going, because I want all this love. I want to see all the hero dogs and all the wonderful stuff going on. But what do you, when you sit down to write this and now it's completed, what do you hope people walk away from after they read it?
Well, what we are always striving for in every single book that we write is that we leave the reader with a sense of hope, that we are encouragers for them. So every character and every story is an encourager that we're putting to work, and every dog in this book is an encourager and a carrier of hope that we hope is going to help people just feel better about themselves and feel closer to God, so that they realize that they are never alone. And that this particular book is so exciting to us because, well, we come from very shallow backgrounds. I was the guy who brought you Schoolhouse Rock, and my wife did funny voices for a living. And so We're shallow people. As a matter of fact, we have a pastor who gave us the best compliment in the world one day when he said, "You know what I love about you guys is that you're so shallow." And we looked at him blankly, and he said, "No. What I mean is, you bring them into the shallow end of the pool, and we pastors bring them into the deep end." That's when we high-fived. We said, "Yes, that's who we are."
Well,
we are shallow end people.
We are, and we've worked in the world. We do speak at churches, and we love the spiritual part of life, but we also worked in that down and dirty show business. And I mean, I worked in comedy clubs. I mean, you can't get darker than that sometimes. But we always felt everything that we felt God put in our hearts to do. We always put it through that filter. Does it bring people encouragement? Will people read a story or see a movie and feel better? And the fact that these are true stories, it relates to people saying, "Gee, if that happened for them, maybe that could happen for me." There was a wonderful story in the book that just blew me away, because it was a woman who, her son was going off to Afghanistan, and he said to her, "Mom, can you take Sierra, this huge husky, for the next year?" And she said, "Oh my gosh," she said, "I've got this tiny little place, and I don't know if I can do that." But she loves her son, so she said, "Okay." So Sierra lives with this woman, and they get along great. And one day the woman's sitting down, and Sierra starts taking her nose and hitting like this woman's stomach, and kept pushing and pushing, and it hurt. And she yelled at the dog, and she said, "You go in the other room." And then she felt bad. She felt terrible. She went and found Sierra, this husky. And I didn't know that huskies actually cry. I mean, I didn't realize that around their eyes it gets moist. And she looked at this dog, and she felt so bad, and she thought, well, maybe this dog was trying to tell me something. And she was smart enough to call her doctor and say, "I know this sounds weird, but it pushed on my stomach and it hurt. I just want to see if there's anything there." And he said, "Well, come on and we'll take some tests." Later that evening, he called her and he said, "Your dog has good instincts. You have cancer."
Ovarian
cancer. And the dog found it before any of us could have ever found it. And he said, but they found it so early that we can get rid of it. So the dog literally saved this woman's life. And, you hear that so often. They're even using dogs now to sniff out COVID. Mm-hmm. So, dogs are just, to me, they're like four-legged angels on earth. They really are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with you wholeheartedly on that. It's amazing the stories that I have heard and I've been part of, and the things that I have seen, in the work that I do with animals, and it's just amazing. And then every time I have to pick up one of your guys' books, and in particular this one, Dogwinks, it just highlights that even more. And Squire, I do have to give you a big kudos before I let you off the horn here, or the show here, because you had mentioned early on in the interview that Godwinks has become part of a vocabulary. It's part of our everyday, and it has. It's something I use quite often. Still in it from you using it. You should. Hopefully you got a nice royalty for every time somebody uses that. But I have to also say, you did mention Schoolhouse Rock, and it just the other day I just started singing Conjunction Junction. What's your function? I don't know why. It was out there, and that was a huge part of my childhood, is seeing all the Schoolhouse Rock stuff like that. Yeah. So, well, I've got to ask you this. So, Louise, obviously you've got acclaimed, showbiz history, as you mentioned, the comedian part of it, and the work you did with Tim Conway and Harvey Korman, who are, in my opinion, two of the best ever to do it. How do you, here you are, an entertainer, and you are, trying to make people laugh, trying to put on a great show. Squire, you're out there, you're writing, you're producing, you're doing, the Good Morning America, all that. And then, all of a sudden you decide, hey, I'm going to start writing this Godwinks thing, and then we're going to, make that huge, and we're just going to write a bunch of books about that. How did those two things come into alignment, or was it just another Godwink? Did it just happen that way?
Everything is a Godwink. And, really, if you open up your eyes, you will see Godwinks everywhere. Our job is, Godwinks are like gifts left on your doorstep. You have to open the door and open your gift in order to see it. And once you start seeing Godwinks, you see them all the time. But it really started when Squire was at Good Morning America. He ran Good Morning America. He'd be, in the control room, and they'd have guests on, and some guests would say, ironically, or coincidentally, or, and Squire would always perk up and think, gosh, I wonder if there's more to coincidence than meets the eye. And so he really started doing something, right, sweetie?
Well, there was an opportunity that I had to give a pulpit talk. I didn't want to call it a sermon, but it was a little church that I was going to. Dr. Norman Vincent Peale lived up the road from this little country church. And so they invited me to speak. And so I talked about a topic that had fascinated me, as Louise mentioned, for many, many years, about coincidence. And was there something more to that? In fact, the talk was labeled Coincidence. Is it evidence of God's grand plan? And then I quickly said, I have no idea. I'm the guy who runs Good Morning America. I brought you Schoolhouse Rock, and I don't know. But let me tell you some stories. And so in that moment, I had an audience of adults that were acting like they were children listening to The Night Before Christmas. They were wide-eyed, they were nodding, and all of a sudden I knew that I was connecting with an audience on a topic that I needed to spend more time on. And so that's when I started pursuing what is a coincidence. And then, as we started talking about this book, Louise and I, we would spend a lot of time talking about it, thinking about it, praying about it. We're talking to other people about it. And I had an agent who said, what does a coincidence mean? And I said, I don't know. Would you ask that to Mark Victor Hansen? What does it mean for chicken soup? I don't know what it means. And she said, if you're going to lead your audience, you have to have that answer. And so Louise and I kept talking and thinking and praying about it. And one day, this little word, Godwink, came into mind. And I thought, wow, that sounds kind of like a fun word, like Godspeed, God send, God wink. And I knew that a coincidence was not the answer, because a coincidence, if you look it up in the dictionary, it says it's two events that come together without cause. There's no causal connection. So a Godwink does have a causal connection. So it wasn't a coincidence. So we said, maybe this is what that word is. Maybe this is the word that fills that vacancy. And I went back and into the manuscript. That was the first manuscript for the first book. Went through, took out every coincidence word, put in all those Godwink words, and it fit. And even more important, when people started seeing it and using it, it fit within their language, because they realized subconsciously or consciously that it was filling a vacancy in the language. So now that little word has kind of taken off on its own. Over the years, it's just become more and more known, and it just becomes a tool for us to speak with.
That is just so awesome. I just love that. You are leaving such a great legacy. There's more to come, and now you're official. That word is there. You brought it about. You brought it life, or God brought it life, I should say.
Yeah.
So, but I'm in agreement with you. I don't think there's anything other than being in the dictionary. I don't think there is any coincidences. I think it's all part of the plan. I think we all have a purpose, and I think our dogs and our animals have a purpose, a great purpose. And I think the only difference between us humans and our animals is they understand and accept their purpose a lot better and a lot easier than we do, and work every day at that purpose. We often wander through life trying to figure out why we're here, and maybe spend thousands of dollars in therapy trying to figure it all out.
No, yeah.
It's true, because in all the animal kingdom, it's like, they just, or the lilies of the field, as they say, in the Word of God, how one sparrow doesn't fall from the sky that our Father doesn't know about. Sparrows, birds, dogs, they don't toil, they don't, stress like we do as humans. They just are in the moment. And that's how God wants us to be, in the moment, just to receive all that He has for us. He says, don't be anxious for anything. And so that's what we should do. That's how we should live our life. Just live it in a way that we're going to just enjoy it, have joy.
That's right. I love it. Live the life of our animals. Live a dog's life. And the best way to do it is pick up a copy of the book Dogwinks and read all these wonderful stories of all these wonderful dogs and all the hero work and all the things they do to touch our lives. So this is the true Godwink stories of dogs and the blessings they bring, Dogwinks. I'm really thrilled to have a chance to chat with you guys again. It's always a pleasure, always super fun. The book is fantastic, so keep up the good work there. Where can my listeners follow you and keep track of what's going on and all that wonderful stuff?
Well, thank you, Tim, and we love spending the time with you.
Yeah.
You can go to Godwinks.com, and that will connect you to where we are, where we're going, what's going on. Our Facebook posts, Louise does Godwinkers on Facebook, which is a group, which is more prayer-oriented because Godwinks are always an answered prayer is always a Godwink, and so that's another definition of a Godwink. And the Facebook page that I run, which is Godwinks, facebook.com/Godwinks, it has about 290,000 people, and we share stories there all the time. So we'd love to hear your story. Go to Godwinks.com and share your story and watch the Hallmark movies and the Netflix movies, and we'll be happy campers.
That's right. Well, they'll make everybody else happy campers too, and it's they're going to have to put the roller skates on to keep up with you guys. Can't keep up with you. So much going on. Thank you once again for coming on the show. It's a pleasure. Everybody pick up a copy of the book, Dogwinks. You're going to love it, and obviously go on to the social media sites, keep track, and join the fun. Tell your stories as well. So we'll look forward to everybody doing that. So thank you once again. Congratulations, and we'll look forward to chatting with you guys somewhere down the road.
Thanks you,
Tim.
Tim.
All right. Thanks, Mark.
All right. Well, we're coming to the end of the show today. I want to thank everyone for listening to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. If you have any ideas, questions, or comments, or people you want to hear from or be interviewed on the show, drop us a line. Drop us a line at PetLifeRadio.com. And while you're there, check out all the other wonderful hosts and shows. It's a whole cornucopia of great entertainment at PetLifeRadio.com. So until next time, write a great story about the animals in your life. Put in a book, an article, a blog, get the message out there, and who knows, you may be the next guest on Animal Rights Pet Life Radio. Have a great day.
Let's Talk Pets, every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.